We apologize for the timing of this, coming on the end of a holiday. We have some food, so please help yourself. And these are, what can I say, unusual times, unusual circumstances, so please bear with us as we try to make sense of what's happening. And so we do have a quorum.
Do you want to make an announcement?
Yes.
Really?
I don't want to make anything.
Okay.
Do you want me to make the announcement?
Yes.
All right. Hello, everyone. I spoke with our lawyer, Arthur Schwartz, today. Oh, sorry. I thought I was, oh, there we go. All right. So I spoke with Arthur Schwartz just a few moments ago, and he is, John Vernile, the IED, is taking WBAI to court to try to lift the restraining order. And that is tomorrow morning. And I am going to give you, and he would like people to come and join. Any information about anything regarding Pacifica when we're back on the air, when we're not back on the air, meetings, anything. Any information about WBAI being on the air, off the air, any transition is always on our Twitter page, which is @WBAI. It is the one thing that we still have control over. Okay, so anyway, so I'm just here not to interrupt this meeting, but just to tell you that our lawyer, Arthur, would like people to come to court in support of WBAI, and that is tomorrow morning at about 9:15 in the morning. And it is the appellate court, which is in Manhattan, at 27 Madison Avenue. This is not the best mic in the world, Grayson. 27 Madison Avenue. And it is at the Appellate Division, the First Department, 9:15 in the morning. Again, that's 27 Madison Avenue. He has a feeling that we will probably, that John Vernile, the IED, will not be able to lift the restraining order, but we still have to go through this. So we're looking for people to come out and to support WBAI. Okay, and board members, Arthur asked that you write affidavits.
The local board members?
Yeah, any of you. Write some affidavits in support of the station, why it's important to you, what you think, da-da-da.
And have it tomorrow morning?
And send it to Arthur.
Okay, I don't have his email.
And James is going to talk about that.
The things that Arthur wanted in the affidavits from the board members were that no one was consulted about this seizure of WBAI, no one consented to it, there was no vote on it, and we are in continuing disagreement with it. We don't agree with it, we don't consent to it, we didn't consent to it beforehand, we don't now, and we will not in the future.
So,
Point of information, there's a resolution that is available to the LSB members for tonight, and it covers a lot of those points made by resolution. So that doesn't mean that affidavits supplementing that wouldn't be good, but that's another way of reinforcing things for the court case tomorrow.
So we're going to...
Hand over here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Point of
Marilyn?
order, Madam Chair. It is required that the first
Okay,
order of
all right, we
business
will
be the
do that
agenda.
now. We'll adopt the agenda, but we also have in mind that we're in unusual circumstances right now. So
Madam
So
Chair, I
please
move
take a
to
look.
adopt the agenda. I move to adopt the agenda.
Seconded.
you can read the agenda.
Gotta read it.
I will read the agenda. Item 1, convene meeting, 7:30 p.m. 2, adopt agenda, 20 minutes. 3, roll call, 2 minutes. 4, select timekeeper, 2 minutes. 5, excuse absences, 5 minutes. 6, approve outstanding minutes. The minutes are September 11th, 2019. 7, report from Pacifica National Board directors, 15 minutes, 20 minutes for questions. 8, general manager's report, 5 minutes for report and 5 minutes for questions. There's an asterisk that those 2 items include probable discussion of appropriate actions in response to the interim executive director's shutdown of WBAI. 9, treasurer report and adoption of budget, 10 minutes for report, 30 minutes for the agenda item total. 10, report from Ad Hoc Management Evaluation Committee, 10 minutes. 11, task forces, committees and groups, assignments, delegations, and creations. And that is resolution to form LSB Program Director Search Committee, King Downing, Sean Rhodes, 15 minutes. STE elections to populate LSB Program Search Committee, if formed, 15 minutes. Public comment, 30 minutes to begin no later than 9:15. 13, unfinished business, 5 minutes. 14, new business, 5 minutes. 15, adjourn no later than 9:45 p.m.
I have a question, point of information. This resolution we were talking about, where is that on the agenda? The resolution, resolution of WBA, no, not that one, the one that you were speaking of a minute ago.
Number 7.
Responding to shutdown.
Yeah, that can be, there's an asterisk on the agenda that notes that it can be taken up pursuant to the director's report or to the executive director's, to the managing director's report.
Okay. I would like to move that this come in as number 6.
Instead of the minutes.
Instead of before the minutes.
Why before?
No, we should
So is there-
have the report from the directors first.
Excuse me?
We'll move the minutes down to the bottom.
Oh, the minutes, yeah, sure.
I believe there's some discussion,
He said 7A.
So how about 7A?
That sounds perfect.
So it's been moved and seconded.
no objection.
So it's been moved to
Any objection?
push to have the resolution as 7A. If there are no objections, are we all in favor of adopting the agenda as amended?
Wait.
Mitch?
There's an
Yeah,
amendment.
so, number 1, it's not an ad hoc management evaluation committee, it's a management evaluation
No.
committee that we voted for. So we take out the words ad hoc.
So it's been recommended that we take out the words ad hoc to the Management Evaluation
The other
Committee.
thing is I would like to
And
propose
on that point, hang on a second. On that point, Paul has a, go ahead.
It is the Ad Hoc Management Evaluation Committee. That's how we passed the motion. Now, I know that some people have been sloppy about it, but it's the Ad Hoc Management Evaluation Committee. It was when we created it last year, and so nobody's made a motion to take off the ad hoc, which would be bizarre since it's a special committee, and this tells you that it is a special committee. So, yes, it's the ad hoc.
We'll argue about that later.
Okay,
Let me
thank
just
you.
Anyone you like.
Basir?
And that is that ad hoc has at least 2 meanings, one of which means improvised. This is not an improvised committee. Now, I understand the meaning that you're talking about, but there are several meanings to the term ad hoc. This is not an improvised committee. Therefore, we of the Management Evaluation Committee object to the term being used.
Oh, you can object all you like, but it's not a standing committee, is it?
So, Mitch?
I'd also like to, I'll withdraw that
Okay.
for now. I also want to eliminate for today the approval of the minutes. That might take a while. And we don't have much time.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we remove approving the minutes. Any objections? Okay, so all those in favor of adopting the agenda as amended with the resolution as 7A and removal of adoption of the minutes at this time. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are you counting? Jack?
Any objection?
Okay, all those against, raise your hand. Okay. The agenda passes as amended.
What's the
And
count?
One against.
there's one against.
How many for?
How many for?
Were you against? No, he understands.
We need to count.
13 for, 1 against.
No, he wasn't against.
So 14 for
Ask if there's
unanimous.
any objection.
Oh, it was unanimous. Okay. Jack, can you please do the roll call?
Mitchell Cohen.
Very pissed off.
Don't get angry, Mitch. Get off. Mr. Credico. Ms. Davis.
Here.
Jack DePalma here.
Okay.
Mr. Dingman. Mr. Downey.
Is Dingman on the phone?
No.
Mr. Hammond. Harrison Galman. Ms. Harrison Galman. Ms. Kilgore.
Here.
Audrey Kilgore. Mr. Maitland. Paul One.
Here.
Bashir Machawi.
Here.
Carolyn McIntyre.
Present?
Meltzer Cohn. Mualim Hazel Pinder.
Here.
Mr. Pointer. Dacio Quintana.
Here.
Mr. Rhodes, Sean Rhodes. Here. James Sagerton.
Here.
Mr. Schmid, Max.
Here.
Alex Steinberg.
Present.
Marilyn Vaught Downey.
Here.
Mr. Dee Dee White.
Here.
Mr. Rogers is here. Present.
And we have quorum?
We have quorum. So we'd like to
16.
select, I'm sorry?
16.
16.
Quorum achieved.
Quorum is achieved. Like to select a timekeeper. Anybody here willing to be a timekeeper? Do you want to do it again, Max? Okay.
Why not?
All right, thank you. So now we're going to move to report from Pacifica National Board Directors.
Excused absences.
Oh, excused absences. Jim Dingman reported ahead of time that he wasn't going to be here.
Maxine Harrison Goldman had a prior engagement.
Randy Credico reported he wasn't going to be here. Eugene Hammond reported he would not be here. Did anybody hear from anyone else?
Did we hear from? So can you just recite the people you haven't heard from? You didn't hear from 5, William Ock. And we don't, did anyone hear from Ralph Pointer?
Yeah, he's on his way.
Okay, thank you.
All right, currently he's absent, so shall we, I'll read the names of the people whose absences we currently need to excuse.
Okay.
So Randy Credico, Jim Dingman, King Downing, Eugene Hammond, Errol Maitland, Moira Meltzer Cohen, 5 William Ack, Ralph Pointer, and that's it. I move to excuse those absences.
All those in favor? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand.
1, 2. Hold them up. I'm going to count it. 1,
How about,
2.
are there any objections to, okay.
Okay.
All those in favor of excusing the absences, please raise your hand again.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All those opposed? 2. Okay, we'll do the report from the Pacifica National Board Directors. And any, Vajra, anybody who just got here, we have the agenda and handouts up here.
Okay, I'm going to give a report. I have a long version here for anybody who wants to read. The long version gives you a lot more details. In the interest of saving time, I'm giving a somewhat streamlined version of this report verbally. Okay, and it begins with a kind of a timeline that gives you some perspective on the events that have transpired in the last 3 days. Late July, John Vernile, hired by Pacifica National Board. Vernile was recommended by various people from the KPFA station. August 1st, John Vernile, or Vernile, I'm told he wants his name pronounced, formally begins working as interim executive director. September 5th, opening salvo, removal without warning of the chair of the Pacifica National Board. On September 5th, 2019, the Pacifica National Board, meeting in closed session, voted to remove its chair, Grace Aaron. The vote was instigated by a group of directors on the Pacifica National Board without any previous consultation with most of the other directors and without any previous notice. Many of the directors, caught by surprise, abstained from the vote. The reasons provided for such a drastic step were a concoction of lies and half-truths in the service of an unstated agenda. Essentially, the chair had to be removed because she stood as an obstacle to plans that had long been germinating. September 11th, warning issued of plans to dismantle Pacifica. On September 11th, I wrote a director's report that warned the WBAI LSB of what was coming. Allow me to quote briefly from this report. A group of the directors on the Pacifica National Board is intent on usurping the role of the WBAI LSB in evaluating management. They are intent on removing WBAI's management team by executive fiat. Furthermore, the goal of those behind-the-scenes machinations is not the revival of WBAI, but its dismantling. The general outlines of their plan for WBAI and Pacifica are no mystery. There was at that time a document circulating called Plan B. It called for the dismantling of Pacifica as a network and the devolution of each of the radio stations into its own legal entity. This will be accomplished by essentially scrapping the current bylaws either through a lawsuit or through the intervention of the California Attorney General. Democratically elected local station boards will be gone. They will be replaced by purely advisory bodies appointed by management. The new Pacifica National Board will be smaller and weaker, ceding much more authority to the executive director. It will also have mostly members who are appointed rather than elected. Okay, that's what I wrote on September 11th. September 17th, we have an event that I call the Breaker Faction's Gift to Pacifica. We did not have long to wait for the prediction to be confirmed. Just a few days after I circulated my director's report, on September 17th, Pacifica members throughout the country were greeted with an email blast from a group calling themselves the Pacifica Restructuring Project. 3 current directors signed this document: Bill Crozier from KPFT, Donald Goldmacher from KPFA, and Mansour Sambag from KPFK. A number of other former directors and others long associated with KPFA endorsed this action. The petition launched by the Pacifica Restructuring Project calls for Pacifica's bylaws to be replaced by a brand new set of bylaws that are at their core deeply undemocratic. They want to abolish the local station boards and replace them with advisory boards handpicked by management. This is the formula currently in place at NPR stations, where the community advisory boards are nothing more than rubber stamps for management and listeners have no input into programming decisions. Directors would be mostly appointed. Only 5 would be elected in a winner-take-all election that gives no voice to minority opinions on the board, in contrast to our current proportional representation voting system that does give voice to minority voices on the board. And starting in January, they would name 6 interim directors who will have absolute authority to run Pacifica without any accountability to anyone until such time as they are ready to hold their first station elections. Finally, even if one thinks these horrendous bylaws are a good idea, the breaker faction, that's what I'm calling them from now on, because they want to break up the network. Even if you think this is a good idea, they are insisting that a petition by members followed by a referendum of the entire membership happen right now while we are in the middle of an election for local station board delegates. Okay, that was September 17th. September 19th, breaker faction tries illegal parliamentary maneuver to force new bylaws on Pacifica. The Pacifica National Board met on September 19th, the first meeting after the chair was removed. The meeting had been deadlocked by an 11-11 vote most of the evening as a number of directors who now realize the destructive nature of the breaker faction regrouped. After a couple of directors left the meeting because of the lateness of the hour, Director Crozier saw an opportunity and tried to add an agenda item from another special meeting to the special meeting called by Directors Steinberg, Aaron, and Voorhees. Crozier's motion would have set a timeline for bylaws amendments. It was obvious that the only bylaws amendments anyone had in mind was that of the Pacifica restructuring plan. Crozier made no attempt to explain how the resources for a petition and a referendum could be committed at the same time as we are having an election. Fortunately, Director Crozier's motion was ruled out of order because he never got a second for it. Should have been ruled out of order for other reasons, but that's another story. September 30th, breaker faction tries again at an illegally noticed meeting. On the eve of the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, the breaker faction tried to convene a PNB meeting called with only 3 days' notice, out of compliance with CPB notice requirements. The meeting did not achieve a quorum. Fortunately, that did not stop the members of the breaker faction from accusing other PNB members of, quote, abandoning their fiduciary responsibilities because they refused to recognize an illegally convened meeting. They also set a date for a, quote, continuation meeting, which actually never happened. While all this was going on, there was, at the same time, a campaign was being launched to demonize WBAI. As I explained, the new anti-democratic bylaws were one part of the breaker faction's plan. The other part is the sale of one or more of the East Coast stations. The immediate target for that is WBAI. In order to gain support for that, they have launched a disinformation campaign aimed at convincing board members that all the financial problems of Pacifica are due solely or primarily to WBAI, which they claim is badly mismanaged. They have tried to justify this patently false statement by cherry-picking financial data that seems to support their claims and failing to report other data that refutes it. There have also been accusations unwarranted by the facts that the WBAI general manager allowed a producer to violate FCC regulations, thereby jeopardizing our license. If you want to know more about that, speak to us later in private. At the same time as the campaign to demonize BAI was going on, there was a campaign of character assassination against the WBAI general manager. They have plans to remove the general manager of WBAI. This began with a campaign of character assassination and false accusations against him. Many of these accusations have been made on closed lists of the Pacifica National Board. However, enough of them have been leaked to some of the public lists that everybody knows about them. These include allegations that the WBAI general manager lied and manufactured phony data about WBAI's performance, that our Nielsen ratings were cooked and they weren't genuine, and that our membership lists were faked. All of these accusations can be easily refuted. I wrote this over the weekend before the events of Monday. I wrote the following paragraph. preparations being made to take control of WBAI signal away from WBAI management. Certain actions by the interim executive director in recent days have the effect of taking away the local autonomy of WBAI from its management. These involve the promotion of certain individuals who are not on the WBAI payroll to positions where they could control the technical facilities of WBAI. There have also been moves to make it possible for a remote location to control the broadcasts that WBAI airs from 4 Times Square. These preparations to take control of WBAI are being done in the shadows behind the scenes. I am making it public. Wasn't too long for that to be borne out. October 7th, WBAI is shuttered by a sneak attack in the early morning hours. And if you look at the longer version of my report, there's many supporting statements to back up what I say. I also have a discussion about why, among other things, the shuttering of WBAI is financially makes no sense. It will only result in a drain on Pacifica. So it's quite logical, therefore, to conclude that the shuttering of WBAI is not the final solution. It's a temporary solution until they can figure out a way to sell the signal, which has been on their agenda all along. So let me just conclude by saying Pacifica is facing a real financial crisis. That financial crisis has been used as a pretext for these actions. I discussed this in an earlier report where I talked about the parallel of using psychological manipulation that Naomi Klein documented in her book, The Shock Doctrine. And that's what we're up against here. The Breaker faction's solution to Pacifica's financial crisis is to abandon the Pacifica mission and abandon the East Coast stations. It's a strategy of provincial defeatists who have lost sight of the great potential of Pacifica to become a real network that makes a difference in the politics and culture of this country at such a critical time. Thank you.
Probably 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Thank you, Alex. The next item that we're going to discuss is a resolution for the full board to look at, and we will read that. In the meantime, I'm going to repeat an announcement that was made earlier, and some of you were not here when that announcement was made by Linda Perry, which is that the lawyer for our case for WBAI, Arthur Schwartz, has asked that any of us who are willing and able to write an affidavit, and this is especially important for anybody who's on the board, to write an affidavit to Arthur Schwartz stating that whether or not you were consulted about the move to shut down WBAI, whether or not you consented to that move, and whether or not there was a vote taken at any of our meetings to shut down WBAI and go along with what happened this week. So,
And he wants to show up, right?
and he would like to have this by tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning there is if any of you can show up for this to provide support, it would be very much appreciated. There's an appeal of the temporary restraining order. Arthur Schwartz, has filed a temporary restraining order which allowed WBAI to regain access to its property and to come back into the building.
Came from the court.
Website finances
Right.
and broadcasting ability.
And, right, so to regain access to the broadcasting facility, it states, I'm not a lawyer, but it states that has to be given back to WBAI.
From Atlantic Avenue?
Yes.
388 Atlantic Avenue.
So their lawyers are appealing this, and there's a hearing tomorrow morning at 9:15 a.m. at 27 Madison Avenue at 25th Street, the Appellate Division. I'm going to pass this around because it's on here. Actually, somebody should add to this Arthur Schwartz's email and phone number, or email anyway. Oh, all right, never mind. Jack, just pass it around as is, please. Just pass it around as is. So we're going to pass around the information about where the meeting is tomorrow so that you can attend and provide an affidavit.
All right.
Oh, wait, Marilyn's got a question.
Yeah, I just have a question. It seems to me the important affidavits would be from PMB members certifying that there was never a PMB meeting where this action was presented as a proposal or approved, because the group that carried out this action were a rogue group and didn't really have the authority. Neither Vernile, the IED, had the authority, nor the people who falsely said they represented the PMB.
One reason why it's important for LSB members also to fill that out is because the LSB is responsible for telling the ED whether or not to fire the management. So that never came up. We're in the middle of our management evaluation now. So our affidavits are important for that reason, because they acted illegally and we're trying to show that they're acting illegally.
Yeah. So just a clarification, the affidavits are important to come from the board members, and Arthur Schwartz would like to have that by tomorrow morning.
Hello. All right, I believe that you've asked me to read the resolution. So hopefully this resolution will do much of the work, and you can also crib from it to write your affidavit, and should be a strong support for Arthur's case for us. So resolution, I apologize this is long, but I think it's necessary to cover a number of points. Resolution of WBAI's Local Station Board responding to shutdown of WBAI New York. Whereas Article 7, Local Station Board, Section 3, Specific Powers and Duties, subparagraph E of the bylaws assigns various responsibilities respecting local station management to the WBAI Local Station Board, the WBAI LSB and LSB, as the Local Station Board for WBAI New York Radio, including, in part, quote, to screen and select a pool of candidates for the position of general manager, close quote, and that the, quote, LSB may initiate the process to fire a station general manager, close quote. Two, open quote, to screen and select a pool of candidates for the position of station program director, from which pool of approved candidates the station's general manager shall hire the station's program director, close quote. To evaluate the station's program director, to work with station management to ensure that station programming fulfills the purposes of the foundation and is responsive to the diverse needs of the listeners, demographic and communities geographic served by the station, and that the station policies and procedures for making programming decisions and program evaluation are working in a fair, collaborative, and respectful manner to provide quality programming, and to ensure that the station works diligently towards the goal of diversity and staffing at all levels and the maintenance of a discrimination-free atmosphere in the workplace. Whereas the WBAI LSB has been working diligently in all respects to fulfill its responsibilities, and yet WBAI's broadcasting has apparently been shut down, nevertheless, without proper procedure or involvement of the WBAI LSB. And whereas a new interim executive director for the Pacifica Foundation, John Vernile, appeared at WBAI with several other individuals who are supposedly supposed to be currently serving as directors of the Pacifica National Board, together with individuals taking direction from Mr. Vernile and or these two aforementioned directors of the PNB, defined term the EID crew, the IED crew, and seized control of WBAI's premises in order to shut down WBAI's normal authorized broadcasting and replace it with content of their own choosing. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the LSB as follows. Section 1. We declare for the record that the IED crew have shut down WBAI without notifying the LSB or any of its officers of these actions or providing any explanation thereto. And this is despite the fact that the LSB chair previously reached out to the IED seeking to open communications with the IED and offering to inform the IED about station and LSB operations and management, to which invitation the IED never responded. And despite the fact that the LSB's Management Evaluation Committee similarly contacted the IED and similarly offered to inform him of its work underway, to which invitation the IED did not respond. Section 2. We declare for the record that WBAI's broadcast signal has since been used to broadcast programming that we hereby find is not responsive to the diverse needs of the listeners' demographic and communities geographic served by the nation. That such programming is not properly reflected of station policies and procedures and is not being produced by working in a fair, collaborative, and respectful manner, and is not providing quality programming. In fact, we find WBAI's content has been politically neutered. Section 3. We declare for the record that the programming broadcast over WBAI by those seizing the WBAI station is harmful to WBAI and its brand and to the community and is driving away WBAI listeners. Section 4. Those seizing the WBAI station to shut it down have violated the bylaws by not continuing to broadcast notice of the October 9th, 2019 LSB meeting as required by the bylaws. Section 5, we declare for the record that the WBAI LSB made no decision to fire WBAI's General Manager Berthold Reimers, nor Program Manager Linda Perry, nor has it voted in any way to express dissatisfaction with their work that could justify any current action that would hurt WBAI and Pacifica by removing them from their positions, especially in the arrogant, destructive, and illegal manner that the IED crew acted. Section 6. We hereby vote to fire whatever acting general manager the ID has put in place in charge of WBAI and to direct that whatever acting program director put in charge by the ID crew also be fired because for at least 3 full business days they have not identified themselves to the LSB or taken any steps to establish the relationship and coordination with the LSB required under the bylaws, nor were whatever people who may hold such positions put in place by the ID crew with proper procedures or involvement of the WBAI LSB. And we further declare for the record that we did not endorse or in any way concur in any actions of the IED crew putting such individuals in place, which we consider to be illegitimate and in contravention of the legal processes stipulated in the bylaws. Section 7. The apparent ultra-virus unauthorized actions by the IED crew that were launched with intentional secrecy and quite obviously intentionally harmful to WBAI and very significantly to Pacifica as a whole, including financially, and accordingly, the LSB is committed to investigating for further appropriate action the likely personal liability of all members of the IED crew, as well as any PNB member or other person assisting them in any way in such actions taken by them prior to the authorization of the PNB. Section 8. Although we read in the New York Times that quote, Pacifica leaders said that the decision to shut down the station had been in the works for months and that it was an essential step to save the larger foundation for ruin, close quote. We do not know who the people are who are identifying themselves as these, quote, Pacifica leaders, close quote, and the LSB was never advised of or consulted with about the, quote, decision to shut down the station, close quote, that assertedly had been in the works for months. And as such, we think it is clear that there could not have been any emergency reason for the formulation of secret plans to shut down the station without P&B or LSB knowledge, approval, consultation pursuant to months of secret planning. Section 9, the LSB finds for the record that unnoticed shutdown of WBAI was apparently intended to inflict extra harm on WBAI and Pacifica as a network by doing it in the middle of ongoing successful fund drive by WBAI and in the middle of an ongoing LSB election, thus impeding the right of WBAI voters to a free and fair election, including particularly but not limited to impeding the ability of WBAI members to vote by taking down WBAI's web pages and the web links about the election. Section 10, the WBAI LSB finds it utterly reprehensible and believes it likely criminal that the IED crew involved in this insubordinate insurrection arbitrarily shut down WBAI's web pages and web links about the election and redirected WBAI listener-donated funds to KPFA in California without first informing the PNB directors and gaining approval of WBAI's management or governing body. Section 11, we find that in multiple ways the actions of the IED have been pretextual, associated with the dissemination of false information, and also appear to be discriminatory in intent and in result. Section 12, we urge that all WBA members to make every effort they can to vote in the local station board elections, irrespective of the impediments thrown up by the actions of the IED crew, while also recognizing that it is now probably necessary for Pacifica to attempt corrections for the defects the IED crew have introduced into the election process. Section 13, the LSB hereby supports and encourages all funding efforts to ensure that WBAI continues as station broadcasting in New York, appropriately reflecting the needs of our local communities. Section 14, the LSB is particularly affronted and concerned that the months of planning this seizure by the IED crew has entailed the deliberate elimination of WBAI's archives, which, no longer available, means that WBAI history is erased in a very Orwellian fashion at exactly the time when the public seeing WBAI in the news should be able to explore and discover the content of the station that the IED crew is now making the subject of controversy. Section 15, the WBAI LSB calls on any council representing Pacifica not to provide legal representation in council for any of the IED crew in connection with their insubordination, insurrection, and ultra-virus acts, as to do so would be and must be handled as an unwaivable conflict of interest. Section 17, the WBAI LSB calls upon the PNB not to indemnify any of the IED crew in connection with their insubordinate insurrection and ultra-virus acts, and instead we ask the PNB to consider how it can recover for the losses sustained by WBAI and the rest of Pacifica by personally pursuing the individuals of the IED crew who engaged in such acts. Section 17, the WBAI LSB urges the directors of the PNB who have not invalidated their status as directors by participating as a member of the IED crew or by acting to support their actions, to remove from the board and from any position in Pacifica all who participated in this attempted coup. Section 18, the WBAI LSB expresses on behalf of the station our gratitude to the mayor of the city of New York and to the New York State Attorney General for their expressions of friendship and support for WBAI, and urge them to assist WBAI in getting back on its feet. Section 19, this resolution shall take effect immediately and direct the LSB to forward this resolution to the PNB and make every effort to promulgate it widely for public view and to ensure it becomes widely known that the LSB denounces this locking out of WBAI staff and the taking over of its programming.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt this resolution. All those in, is there any discussion? Excuse me, yes.
I would like to move that this motion be adopted by acclamation. I think it's very important that we have a unanimous vote on this, especially for those who will be looking at us on the Pacifica National Board. So I move that we adopt this motion by unanimous acclamation.
Okay, this is...
Well,
We need to talk about that.
Yeah, you can continue discussion.
Okay,
I didn't mean to cut off discussion.
Pass the microphone.
Who's next? I think I was. The mic is down there, let it go there.
Well, we have one down here already.
Oh, okay, so one down there, one here, that's fine. We'll just go back and forth, is that all right?
Okay.
So, you think you were, okay.
Yeah, I just want to question the section 6 where it says, we hereby vote to fire whatever acting general manager, et cetera, and direct that whatever acting program director put in charge by the IED crew also be fired. And I just want to make sure, I believe it was said that Linda Perry was fired and then she was rehired, and would that reference her?
No.
Can we make that more clear in the language?
We could say, not Linda Perry.
No, you would say, we could say national, because the people who were hired on the national level.
it already says put in place by the IED.
Yeah, well, he did that. He fired her, then fired her, okay.
So she's,
Well, we
she's
could,
fired by now.
we could say not Linda Perry, to be clear. The point is that there is a firing process, and it requires 2 out of 3 votes. One of the votes is the LSB. If we put our vote in place here now today, then the PNB can complete the process with a second vote. And if we don't, then they would have to come back to us to complete a firing.
Well, we're gonna go, all right, down there.
yes, I think it's, go ahead.
No. You let me on your show last night, so go ahead.
I think it's important to show unanimity by a show of hands, not just acclamation. They should be looking at everybody in their eye who says no to these actions. Show of hands, thank you.
Or a roll call vote.
Roll call vote, whatever. It's, no secret ballot. We have too many secrets already.
Agreed.
Can you say that in closed session, please?
Yeah, did we subpoena the whistleblower? Do we have a whistleblower? So I had a typo correction in section 14 that in the top line, months should be MONTHS without the apostrophe. That's the insignificant comment. I would like to change the name to the IED crew, but that's something else. But the main point I wanted to make was in section 10, that when we talk about criminality, we ought to take the language from section 19 that talks about locking out staff and the taking over the programming and insert that into the section 10 as additional criminal behavior for illegally occupying the premises, evicting staff and producers and locking them out.
Right.
I think the criminal activity goes way beyond doing something to the website.
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's mine.
I second that amendment.
What do we have?
Second amendment.
Do we have language on it?
Yeah, so the language would be, we find it reprehensible and believe that it is criminal, not likely. I'm willing to just say, we believe it is criminal. It's our belief. We don't have to use likely. It's criminal that they illegally occupied the station premises, evict producers and staff, and locked them out.
Wait, where are we?
Section 10,
10. Thank you.
and stole equipment.
And remote equipment.
I heard vandalism.
Stole.
I heard vandalism. I heard vandalism.
And committed acts of vandalism.
Now we need, let's have the language again.
Yeah.
Catherine Davis?
I thought I was getting called on.
You got the language?
I never started.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was me. All right, two fast things. One, the local station board doesn't fire the program director. The local station board's power is to initiate the termination of a general manager, which then, by the bylaws, goes, if the LSB were to do that, it would then go to the executive director. If the executive director agreed, the general manager is fired. If the executive director disagrees, the question goes to the whole PNB. If they agree, the general manager is fired. If they disagree, the general manager is not fired. There is no provision regarding the LSB firing a program director. All right. We've been through this. We've been through this, so I know about it. The other thing is, I'm not a lawyer, and I know lawyers like to use Latin. And Section 7 says, the apparently ultra vires, now I guess that's some piece of Latin lawyers use, that's okay, but then later in Section 15 and Section 16, it calls ultra virus. And I'm wondering if maybe somebody spell checker threw virus in for viris.
I'll correct that typo.
ultra-virus.
But the other term applies too.
Otherwise, I think we should come out with something like this, and we should stand up to these people, because if you read the treasurer's report, you know that I think it goes several layers deep what these people are actually doing, and we've got to oppose them.
We're gonna go, next is, I'm sorry, we're gonna go.
The language for the change for the meeting stuff.
Oh, God, where is that even?
Oh, you're talking about, just a minute, in the meantime, Errol?
Yeah, oh, man, wow, I don't even know where to start. The last time I was in this position, I was the whistleblower. And when I blew the whistle, it was blown loud and clear, and everyone heard it, including members who are sitting here on this board who try to silence my voice. It's a sad day that we are at WBAI. When they took over KPFA some years back, 10,000 people were out in the street. They had a ladder, they scaled the building, and they got in there. They seized our transmitter, and that has always been the plan. And it was the plan of Miss Grace Aarons when she came to New York to talk about the Mau Maus, who were in charge of that radio station here at that time. I would like to put a preamble or a whereas, or to start this document over. WBAI, the station itself, was a gift, a trust. I take the word gift back. WBAI was a trust entrusted to Pacifica to continue the vision of Louis Schweitzer. Okay, it was. Okay. WBAI was a radio station back in the 50s or 60s who broadcast the proceeding live of the Communist Party USA. Okay. Now, that is the history of WBAI. And he did not want his station to become the pablum that I heard this morning. If that station is so bad it could kill rats. Okay, so I would like this resolution somewhere in there with all the lawyers we have here and the loquacious people to make clear that WBAI, that frequency, is a trust. And Pacifica has violated that trust. And that is the ground on which we are going to fight.
Errol?
Right on.
It was given to New York City community.
It was entrusted to Pacifica to continue the vision of Louis Schweitzer.
Okay, so we're going to take hands and...
Am I next?
Yes. Catherine Davis is next.
I think we have to get this to the lawyer in the morning. So could everyone who has a suggestion write it on the back of one of these pieces of paper and give it to Carolyn so that she can make sure that she gets it in and we can get it to the lawyer by 9:30? That would be very helpful. Number two, my suggestion. Well, then do it so that we can pass the resolution. We need it in writing. But that's not why I took the mic. The reason I took the mic is because it seems to me that they also stole our money.
Okay, yeah, we can add that.
They took the donation site, and they took the bank accounts, and they took the, the credit cards. They took the BAI buddies. They took everything. They took every penny that our listeners donated, and we have
fundraising for the California station, KPFA, using the California phone number to send the money to KPFA.
And they actually took checks that were there in the station that people had mailed in. So they stole checks, they stole corporate checks, they stole the accounts, they stole everyone who's a BAI buddy. That means that all that information is now in these people's hands. And they took the website domain, they took everything. Everything. And they're fundraising on our air, still taking the money from WBA. I think we have to include, show me the money.
So then how about adding return on...
I just want to point out, I know I read it fast, but the paragraph that talks about criminal, we believe the activities as criminal, talks about taking the money. I want everyone to remember, I suggest that everyone remember that everyone has been asked to generate and submit their own affidavits. So there's a lot of things that a lot of these amplifications can certainly be handled in the affidavits that will be submitted. I would like to get this to Arthur Schwartz in as good form as quickly as possible. And I have a limited ability to handle too many changes that, unless I understand them really clearly and know exactly what they are.
Chair? Yeah. Chair?
Is there somebody down there?
Basir?
While the shutdown of the website is mentioned and the shutdown of the archive, as a producer of content for WBAI, I see this as theft of intellectual property. That if in fact my program, which I go ahead and allow WBAI to post on the archive, is now no longer available, that is theft of intellectual property, very clearly. And while that doesn't necessarily need to be included in the resolution, it's something that obviously has to be considered as we move forward.
Michael, real quick, section 13, second line, second word, after the second word, insert the word A.
As a station broadcasting?
Yeah. As a station.
Yes.
Alex?
It's station broadcasting.
Yeah. Was they?
A station.
All right, sorry.
Yeah, this is just a comment on Errol's suggestion. I think we may want to defer that. There may very well be a different legal status to the relationship of Pacifica to BAI, but I don't know if we know that at this point. I know that there are stories about it, but we need to get a lawyer to actually do research on that. And if there is a different legal status, that could be very important. But I think it would be better if we just defer that discussion as far as this motion goes. Just pass the motion and ask our lawyer to do some research on whether there is indeed some kind of a trust relationship and not simply an ownership relationship.
But if I may respond. Madam Chair, may I respond?
Yes. Errol.
You see, WBAI is not just another radio station that you trade on the market. It was a station that had equipment that was broadcasting, that the man who owned it didn't want his radio station to become another commercial entity, selling products. He transferred it to Pacifica because he thought Pacifica would maintain this vision. He sold the equipment. I worked on some of the original equipment that Louis Schweitzer sold to Pacifica, but he did not sell the license. So Pacifica cannot break that agreement now because they can. And I don't believe down the line what we need to really do is to, as a community, get on the FCC, who will make the ultimate decision as to what will become of the license, the WBAI. So, right now, I think any document that we are drafting has to go back to the birth and how Pacifica got it. And it just has to be one line embedded in this document.
Can you dictate the line right now?
Write it.
Just write it down. Here.
Say it into the tape, too, so I can know.
Whereas WBAI, which means Broadcast Associate Incorporated, was given in trust to Pacifica to maintain the vision of its founder, Louis Schweitzer, to maintain a radio station that would broadcast diverse and contrary views to the New York community. Okay. That's my whereas. And then you can do the therefore.
Oh, you do it.
You got it.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got it.
That'll be the first whereas.
That's right.
Okay.
I think that's a beautiful addition, and I think it also gives this, Errol, I think it's a beautiful addition to this resolution, and it gives you the spirit of how this came to be. And I think it's important to have that spirit and in the original mission, and as you said, a gift of trust, and that gift of trust being broken.
Okay, so can we, I move that we vote on this motion as amended.
Roll call vote.
We'll take a roll call vote.
Wait.
Jack?
No, I don't know. I don't know where it is. There's a lot of chaos.
Madam Chair, just a point of personal privilege. I am hearing from counsel over here, and I have to listen to my lawyer, that
If I may, Officer Schwartz and I just spent the last 4 hours looking for this wonderful elusive document, calling some of our local historians, Ralph Engelman and stuff, so just a plea, since we haven't been able to find it, and it's critical. We can recite it, but I want to be a little bit more clear of what we think it says. The issue before the court tomorrow, I don't know if people fully get that, is a very simple one and essentially a commercial one. We are the licensee, Pacifica is the licensor. That is the adversary position. And so at any time they can cancel the license. That's about it. That's the argument they're going in at 9:15 with. What we were looking for is, and what we need to say, and I just sent Arthur, and we just wrote out something, essentially that it is our belief, and right now it has to be on information and belief since we don't have that seminal document, but that it was gifted for the citizenry of New York to be held in trust. It's a restrictive covenant. It's not one of the bad restrictive covenants, like keeping folks of color off of golf courses, but it has enormous legal weight. It must be given consideration. So let's say there was a housing project by HUD or something, somebody wanted to raise it to build condominiums, and then you find a restrictive covenant that said, but this was with federal monies for low-income people. No matter what the profit motivation, etc., they couldn't do it. So it has enormous importance, and it can't be added to the legal papers now, but it's perfectly fine if it were in a statement that said that upon information and belief, that Lou Hill, essentially, no, I know that, but it was trusted for the citizenry of New York to be held in trust. It wasn't assumed to be a commercial relationship, even though the license. So if we could just frame it like that, and it's not for his vision, but it was for his vision was that it be held for the citizenry of New York. And the reason that's also important is because we have an appointment with Letitia James, our state attorney general, and we're trying to have another approach with her, which is that we are an irreparably important historic broadcast venue that is irreplaceable for New York. And so that it needs to be preserved and kept, and there are other causes of action and ways that she can act upon that to preserve it, even if things do not go exactly as we would like tomorrow. And we could talk about what actually is going to happen tomorrow. But just a plea to any of you historic mavens, this was 1948 or so, but that document, which should be on file with the FCC, we are trying to get it, but just explicitly, it was in trust. It was for Pacifica to hold in trust for the citizenry of New York. And that becomes extremely, extremely important because it's our local signature that is there to be preserved as well. So,
Maybe
Thank you.
1960, right?
It was switched in January of 60.
Bajra?
Yeah, I just, I have some language that may satisfy the point that our Paul brought up in sections 5 and 6. So the section 5 could now say, thank you. So the section 5 would now say, begin, we declare for the record that the WBAI LSB made no decision to recommend the firing of WBAI's general manager Berthold Reimers, nor of program manager Linda Perry, and the interim, that's a point, nor of interim program manager Linda Perry.
Director, I'm not the manager. Director.
Yeah, program director.
Interim program director? Oh, okay. Okay, so that would be the one change in section 5. And in section 6, we hereby direct that whatever acting general manager the IED has put in place in charge of WBAI be fired, and that whatever acting program director, et cetera. Okay, so I have that. I have it written here if someone wants to look at it. But I think that satisfies the bylaws, whatever it is, what we're charged with doing.
Okay, can you read that again?
Yeah.
Section 6.
First sentence of section 5. We declare for the record that the WBAI LSB made no decision to recommend the firing of WBAI's general manager, Berthold Reimers, nor of the interim program director, Linda Perry. And then the rest of it stays the same. And in section 6, we hereby direct that whatever acting general manager the IED has put in place in charge of WBAI be fired, and that whatever acting program director, and the rest of it stays the same.
Madam Chair?
Okay, James?
I don't care.
I'd just like to ask unanimous consent of the body to hear from Linda Perry, who is here with us, as we all know. What her status is now. Is she hired, fired? Is she a person that the IED has put in place as an acting IED? So this language would refer to you, Linda, or is it, what's your status?
I don't think she knows. My status is that I am sure that I have not been, my firing had been suspended for about 2 hours. I assume after that I was fired once again.
So you're happy with this language?
My firing was rescinded as I entered the situation to safeguard WBAI, and I assume afterwards I was let go again by them.
May I just say thank you? I understand that Linda actually physically took some of our property and protected it by placing it in a secure location to preserve it for us going into the future. There were a couple of big guards there while she was doing these things, and we appreciate what she did.
So to incorporate those changes that Vajra and Errol have suggested, can we now take a roll call vote?
I believe King is rewriting section.
Okay, there's more.
We need to have a vote on whether or not to take a roll call vote. But I think it'll be.
I wanted to amend what
Okay.
Audra said, to put it in different
All right.
words. Do you think, let me check with Vajra. So I would change it to, we hereby direct that whoever acting general manager the IED has tried to put in place.
Whichever, not whoever.
Okay, whichever, has to be rescinded.
No, you can't rescind a person.
Well,
You immediately remove.
right, the problem that I have, I agree obviously with the spirit of it, is that by saying that they be fired, we're sort of accepting that they were there legitimately in the first place.
That's right.
Okay, the audience is, we're having from the peanut gallery here. Immediately removed rather than fired. And just leave it as, where is it? Whatever, we hereby direct that whatever acting general manager the IED has put in place in charge of WBAI be immediately removed, and that whatever acting program director put in charge by the IED crew also be immediately removed.
Wait, where are you talking about? What number?
6.
On number 6.
Can I just say that our real schedule is here? We're round of applause for the independent that printed it.
So I think it's really important, so we will incorporate these changes, and are we ready to take a vote?
We have to, in order to do a roll call vote, we have to vote to do it.
Okay, all those in favor of a roll call vote, please raise your hands.
Hold on.
It just goes automatic.
Roll call vote.
All in favor for the roll call vote? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I'm not supposed to vote, but
I think it's unanimous.
it's unanimous. Okay.
Roll call vote, you have to roll call.
No.
We voted to
He's
say
gonna do
roll
it.
call vote.
In order to have it, we have to have it, and it only requires a 40% vote.
Jack, would you like to do the roll call?
I'm going to stand up.
Okay.
I feel so much more comfortable standing on my seat. I'm Jack DePalmer, and I say yes.
Mike.
Yeah, can I just interject? We're saying as amended.
For the sake of the recording. Mitchell Cohen.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Randy Credico absent. Catherine Davis.
Yes.
Jack DePalma, yes. Jim Dingman.
Yes.
King Downey.
Hell yeah.
Hell yes. Eugene Hammond absent. Maxine absent. Vajra.
Yes.
Yes. Errol Matlin.
Affirmative.
Affirmative, yes. R. Paul.
Yes.
Bashir. Carolyn McIntyre.
I normally am not, I'm not supposed to normally vote.
She's at the bottom for a reason.
Okay, right, so do me last.
You're not using the form. All right.
I'm sorry. Carolyn will abstain for now. Maria Meltzer, absent. 5 Mulayam, AK, absent. Hazel Pinder. Yay or nay? Yay. Ralph Pointer.
I support.
Yes. Dacia Quintana.
Yes.
Yes. Sean Rhodes.
Yes.
James Sagerton.
Yes.
Max Schmee.
Absolutely.
Was not going to be over there.
Alex Steinberg. Marilyn Vutt Downey. Michael D. White. D.D. White.
Absolutely, positively, and I'll go with a reference to the Max's obscenity.
And I don't think Bertol votes, but I do believe you're not supposed to vote, but you're allowed to say, yes, you do, you endorse it.
No, she can't. No.
I will say that technically I'm not supposed to vote, but these are unusual circumstances, and nobody in Pacifica is following the rules. So my spirit says, in spirit, I absolutely support this resolution. And I want to compliment the board for coming together to pass this resolution unanimously. Thank you. The next thing on the agenda is a report from our general manager.
18 yes, right, Rob? 0.
Did you call Sean Rhodes his name?
Yes.
And he said yes. Holy shit.
Okay, are we ready? We're not sure about that. We're waiting. All right, good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I have 5 minutes. I have to talk really fast and skip a lot of details. So basically on Monday morning, I received a call from Linda, and she says, what the heck, I just received a letter, I'm fired. And then obviously that was pretty shocking, so I kind of went quiet for a bit, and I said, wait a minute, let me think. So then I called Alex Steinberg and put them on the line, and then we were thinking, and we couldn't think, and I said, well, let me get back to you. So I checked my email, and I said, I called in the back, I said, by the way, I got fired too. And then we started receiving texts and emails from Leonard Lope, from Jesse, who was on vacation in Europe, from everyone else saying that they fired. So then that happened. So, I went down to 388, and sat around the corner at, and met with Alex and King Downey. Yes. Started talking about what we're going to do. But in the meantime, before that, what happened is these people came in at 7 o'clock in the morning. They sent us an email exactly at 7 when they knew they were in front of the building to tell us that they were fired, which is a violation of the union contract because they didn't even tell the union they were going to fire the union employees, or they didn't discuss it at all. So they went up. They came with 2 locksmiths. They opened the door. They changed the locks, and then they took down all the mics, and then they dismantled all our 2 broadcasting studios. They opened my office and they copied my computer. They took some files, and then interestingly that all the files of receipts of payments and all the bank statements that were in another, bunch of files, they left them. So obviously they weren't interested in finances. The worst part is the one that really got Linda upset is they finally went and took the frames of all of our portfolio that we lined up in the hallway. They took them down and they put them in a corner, like in my office, right by the window where water leaks and all that stuff. They just threw them over there. So that just total disrespect for WBAI history.
Where's the picture of Fred?
Yeah, so I don't know. So that's what they did, you know. And what they did also is they did not fire the interim development director, and I explain to you why that is.
Who is that?
That's Andrea Katz. Yeah, she holds the key to the kingdom. She manages the website. She has access to the BI Buddy, the Braintree, and stuff like that. So what they did is, well, I knew there's something was going on because they called our webmaster and they asked for password and login into all our website and all of our.
How did they get those passes?
Yes. Well, he had to give it to them. It was an employee of them at the time. Like, you cannot just say no. So they did that. So they did that, and then.
You gotta get militant.
Well, let me finish my report. So they did that, and then they ordered Andrea to shut down the website, to cancel Braintree, and then to shut down. So the website is where we make all our money. Braintree is the mechanism that processes our credit cards and donation and moves the money into the bank. They told her to shut down the BI Buddy, which brings us $15,000 to $17,000 a month of cash flow and stuff like that. And then, of course, you know, I receive.
Did she tell you that they asked her to do that?
She told me that, yes.
Right in the process of doing that? As she was doing it?
No. She told me later. Yeah,
Why did she tell you when it happened?
Well, listen, let's just state the facts, not assumptions. All right? And then what else they did is, well, they try to have access to our PayPal account, but, you know, she said she didn't know the password or login. So I think she does know it. She didn't give it to them. I think she knows it, but I've changed it a few times.
It's directed to, you go to PayPal, and from what I've heard, it's directed to California. We should check right now.
Anyway.
Yeah, anyway. All right, so that's what went down. So the first thing that came to my mind, obviously, I called, you know, Arthur Schwartz, and then I sent him my termination letter. And I said, we need to talk. So he was in court all day. So it's amazing that he actually, between probably 6 o'clock at night and 8:30 at night, where he did some special tricks to get to a judge to file the TRO, he was able to write 30 pages of things that actually worked. So he went to the judge and filed the TRO. So he called me that night before. I was actually kind of relieved. You know, I was like, finally, they fired me. I don't have to deal with this. Let me relax. You know. and then, you know, he called me back and like, oh, you know, so I have to go back again.
Sure.
So then.
Move to extend 10 minutes.
Okay.
Move to extend 10 minutes?
We cannot extend 10 minutes because we have to go to public comment
The
time.
TRO is a temporary
restraining order. So he filed, and then so therefore the judge said that, you know, you can just go back to the station tomorrow. And I said, what do you mean? No, go back to the station. He said, just go back to the station. I'm like, okay. And then he said, you know, you can go back and take it over tonight. And so we debated that, and I said, well, it doesn't make any sense to take it tonight because we cannot broadcast. So I you know, because I was trying to process this thing, and he was very, you know, pushy in that way. He says, like, you should just go and take it over tonight. And then so we decided to go the next morning. So the next morning at 8:30 in the morning, I went with Linda, and we called Grayson, and we went up there. By that time, I texted the owner of the building, so she already had replaced the locks that they put so that we can have access again. So we have full access. They don't have access. And then, you know, and then also legally, if they show up, they can actually be arrested because now they're trespassing the TRO. You know, so we went up there and then we cleaned up the place.
Can you get the wires back to the 4 Times Square?
Well, let me finish my report. Okay. So what they did is, what we found out is they disconnected everything. They took all the mics, they took them out, and they put them in my office. So the production studios were already out. So I found also from the owner of the building that in conversation with them, they told her that, well, you might as well try to figure out somebody to rent the place to cut your losses, because we're not planning on broadcasting from New York. We're not trying to broadcast from New York, so cut your losses. So, and then she started looking for a tenant, actually, because she realized that this was a serious situation. So then what we did is I had Grayson and all of us, we put the pictures back, the folios back up, and we connected everything, and we realized that they took out the EAS, emergency emergency alert system, which is something that has to be at every station, because if you do not have, and it gives the government access to broadcasting if there's an emergency or nuclear bombs to cut in and then do whatever to do. Whenever you hear that noise that goes, that's a test. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So basically, they took the EAS, which means that even if we had access to the 4 Times Square to our antenna, we could not broadcast because it's technically illegal to broadcast without having the EAS in place. So
We are 1 minute before we must go to listener comments.
EAS is that they went in ahead of time and did stuff with the transmitters and EAS there, and they've set things up so that they can run it for California.
Okay. So my understanding is that they didn't get a chance to do that, and then they might be broadcasting illegally because they don't have access to the premises right now based on the TRO and then based on pending tomorrow's decision. So we will find out when we get there if it wasn't there.
A quick question, Berto.
Let me finish quickly. So then what we did is so we started, obviously I called Mimi, we started talking, basically not having any sleep, coordinating what we're going to do and then how we're going to fight those people. I also spoke to their union rep because I didn't speak to the union rep for like 2 months. She reached out to me. I used to answer immediately to talk about union issues and how we're going to solve them. And I never answered her. So she called me finally and she said, what the heck is going on? And I said, first of all, apologies for not getting back to you, because I was ordered not to talk to you because they had lawyers that were talking to the union. And as a general manager, I was not allowed to talk to the union, which is
absolute time.
This is exactly what happened to WBAI on a regular basis. The 4 Times Square, the Empire State Building contract, the 120 Wall Street, and everything else that happened at WBAI is the reason of them not respecting WBAI management. Not just me, but previous managers. The other thing also is where they were hurting us is that $25,000 a month that we're not getting from the CPB because the national office messed up. So all of these things are in play, and then they never want to acknowledge them.
I just need a one-word answer from you. When did you get your notice of termination?
I got mine at 7:30 Monday morning, 7:30 a.m.
So I got mine at 7:40 because she called me right away, and then we're talking, and I looked up. It was email. I can check when I check my email. Yeah. And so did the union members at that time thereafter. And then we filed the union being notified.
Thank you, Berto.
Thank you, Berto. We're going to start the public comment. We have up to a half hour. If we don't feel, if the comments stop, but prior to that, we will resume this discussion where you can ask questions about what is going on. So just a couple of announcements. We need a way to get information out to you all about what's happening, and we need a way to get information from you. So we need to figure that out. Tomorrow I'm going to be at the station or at the Commons at 2 o'clock to talk about how we're going to get information out and take information in as long as the siege is going on, and to also talk about money, because the financial situation is obviously terrible. So anybody who's got ideas on how to help the station financially right now, please come to the Commons tomorrow at 2 o'clock.
This could be a killer fundraiser.
And any ideas, we need to start brainstorming on the fundraising ideas. And one last thing, Melissa, bless her heart, she is such an angel. They never signed a lease. Pacifica never signed a lease with her. So because of that, she is claiming that she does not have to go along with any directive from them to enter the property or to kick WBAI out, and she's had the locks changed, and she will not change them back for them.
I have an announcement for everyone to, in a few days, some of the producers are putting together a website, WBAI.NYC, as a focal point of information. So look for that, and we'll be able to coordinate.
Okay, we're going to start with the public comment, and then we'll have a few more ending comments. Just come up to the microphone, line up. Just line up.
I don't need the mic, but I just want you need the mic. I don't know, was there a legal report? Because I just think people should know what to expect.
No, go ahead.
All right.
No, go ahead.
Let me tell you what's actually happening tomorrow morning at the Appellate Division, which is the first department on 23rd Street in Manhattan. And there's very little likelihood that people can actually be there in any number, because usually what happens is papers are directly handed to a judge, and nobody may even get to see the judge. But specifically what's being done is the corporate law firm is going in to vacate the TRO. And that will be at 9:15. And the whole basis for their action is essentially to say that WBAI is nothing other than a licensee. They are the licensor, so they have complete control. They never transferred it to BAI, and so they can instantaneously revoke it. It's not the most glamorous argument, but that's what they're doing now. If the judge maintains at 9:15 the TRO, the next step will be to go before Judge Deborah James in Supreme, who's a relatively, I always take this with a grain of salt, liberal judge. Arthur will be before her at 2:15, and then the idea is that we would be moving on a contempt proceeding. We believe they are in contempt, but the question is whether or not the TRO is vacated. If it isn't, we go at 2 o'clock to Supreme, and then we hold them in contempt, which is where, frankly, all of the different things that were in this excellent resolution can be brought up. Now, what happens if they do vacate? And we should just understand that. The next thing would be is our lawsuit is effectively defunct. It's eliminated. And then they are claiming that they are going to go into federal court, which is a harder lift, more expensive, and so on. But I just want people to know that regardless, let's hope they get to a 2 o'clock hearing. But the 9 o'clock is decisive only in the sense of whether we live to fight for the 2 o'clock. And no matter what, people have to be prepared. This is just one more moment. There's still going to be a political struggle. I just also got a message from our Washington Station Board, who is meeting now to see if they come up with a similar resolution in support of WBAI, which is extremely good. And the other just last thing is last night we had a very extensive, comprehensive meeting of producers, and we are scheduling a press conference on the steps of City Hall Tuesday at the 11 to 1 o'clock hour. There will be more information on that to get the word out. There are some excellent press releases that have already been written, and a general statement is being put forward. And obviously, we've all got to unite, and it's going to be a full court press. So there's been a great effort, and we have papers on like Black Star News and others on board. So just wanted to let you know that there are numbers of meetings, and for the first time in a long time, not without differences, but we are coming together in a kind of big tent, yes, to save BAI, and then with the longer goal of we still have some heavy lifting to figure out how we economically sustain ourselves in the long run. But just be clear, the lawsuit is not the ultimate, although we have to really commend Arthur Schwartz, who's done yeoman work on this, and against a very big, powerful Wall Street law firm who's sent like 7 or 8 lawyers now. So, thank you.
Give the address for 2 o'clock.
The 215 is at Supreme, which is at Center Street. And what we will do... 60 Center Street. Yes, 60 Center Street. We will, after there is the determination tomorrow morning, put out an email. So if people want to sign on to something with their emails, we will alert them as to what the decision is, as to whether they are hopefully not successful, do not vacate the TRO, and whether we live to then go in and hold them in contempt. And I dare say we could also move for criminal contempt, which would be very nice. Against John Vernile, let's say the names, John Vernile, Bill Crozier, Sabrina Jacobs is acting head of the National Board, and the gentleman who is the engineer who came in, Mo, I forget Mo's last name, he's the...
Adrian LaValle.
Okay.
Adrian LaValle.
Yes. So anyway, but that's where it's at, so thank you. Yeah, all right, so
Hold on, what's the address for the app division in case people want to go outside?
it's 23rd and Madison.
25th.
25th. It's a kind of dead-end street. It's, right, thank you for the GPSs.
Yeah. Hi.
With a big picture of Dred Scott written over the head where you argue the case. The judges who gave us the wonderful Dred Scott.
Hi, so I want to, I'm Fran, and I want to...
We have the 2-minute time limit, just be aware, 2-minute time limit.
Yeah, okay, I just want to pick up on some of this press stuff. Part of this fiendishly meticulous plan was to get the jump on the press in New York City, so that by the day that this happened, there were articles, there were press releases printed in the Times and in the Post and many other newspapers that, of course, only gave their side. Right? Because they know, too, that the court of public opinion, especially in a place like New York, is where it's ultimately going to be at. So they moved ahead of time. All these press releases were written well ahead of time. You may have seen some of them. So by the time this whole thing hit us, of course, we had nothing prepared because we weren't expecting it. And we're starting from behind in terms of press. We're starting from way behind. So at this meeting last night, which was amazing, it was sort of like intergenerational, interracial, it was just, people showed up that hadn't been around in 40 years and that we were richer for it. It was just a great, great meeting. It was so crowded you couldn't move, but that was good. So anyway, some of us formed a little committee. We formed several committees, a press committee to get out, something immediate, just to catch people up, to catch up the press so they could get it out to the people on what's happened so far. So,
and also Tuesday night at the People's Forum at 6:30 will be the continuation of that mass meeting.
That's right. Oh, good. People's Forum. Great.
People's Forum Tuesday night, 6:30.
Okay.
All invited.
Right. So let me just say that a couple of us, Vajra and Harriet Cole and Sally and myself, we worked all day today to get out something, which I have just a few copies of here. But here's what's important. Everything was, so much was happening all at once. We really didn't have a good up-to-date press list, because that's what you do, right? You send it to the press. I haven't done this in years, so I'd forgotten that too. So we're looking, we actually are going to get some press lists tomorrow morning. Okay, I want to, those of you here who have press outreach of some degree, I can give you one of these. I can also, if you give me your email address, I'll send you a link to the digital version so you can start to get it out, as will others. And if you'd like to volunteer to help get these press releases out, we'll do another one shortly for the press conference. Also let me know. That's it. That's what I have to say. Onward.
Thank you.
Do you want the mic? Yeah. Okay.
I am appalled that Pacifica stole our, including my, information, our card numbers, who our bank is, and all that stuff they got, that they have that. And so my concern is, should we cancel our buddies by telling our bank not to fulfill that? And should we change our cards so that they will not have the numbers? That's what I'm, one of the things that I'm worried about on a personal level.
Answer that question. That's an important
Yeah.
question.
No, we're not supposed to.
Not yet.
That's an important question.
I think Bertold can answer because he's not on the board.
CPB requires we let them talk. He can give you the information.
I would wait another 3 days because I don't think they have access to it. They just shut it down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Next, there's a line behind you, so can we move on?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you. Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, bye. I took your seat. I'll get it out of your way here. Go right ahead. I wanted to make 2 points. I spoke to the head of the election committee, Renee, today in California, and she informed me that we need about 200 votes to make quorum. And she emphasized that it really is important for us to make quorum, for everyone to make quorum, and that no elections be canceled, that there be no excuses given for canceling or postponing or doing whatever else can be done to interfere with the election. So I just remind you, the staff has made quorum in New York. Listeners have not. So I'm urging staff to please get on the air and tell people to vote.
Get on the air.
Hey, vote! Vote! I just got on the air.
This is the time to really collect things on paper, phone lists from your listeners, wherever you can get them. It really does help. And the other thing I wanted to point out is one of the first jobs I ever had was press contact for my union at the college when I started there. We started a new union. We had a heavy fight, and I was the press liaison. And I asked the press what they needed, and they told me a bar, which I set up promptly. And they had a wonderful bar, and they stopped in the morning and the afternoon. We had wonderful press attendance because the liquor was great, and they really enjoyed it. Whatever you have to do, folks, the press is really important. You need paper lists of press contacts, but a lot of us need word of mouth also. So any list you're on, I'm not on Facebook or Twitter, but any other list you're on, please go ahead and do that, and I'll be glad to help. But you need a contact list, a really heavy-duty presence with the press, very aggressive to get them there because it's going to get boring after a while. Okay, so anything I can do to help, I'll be glad to. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to say that their motivation is so underhanded, so completely. I mean, that needs to be excavated. How did this whole thing come about? It's just, that needs to be legally excavated or exhumed or whatever. It stinks, Also, this reminds me of Juan Guaido in Venezuela. It really reminds me of that. I mean, who's this? Who are these people? Thirdly, I'd just like to say, this station can only be run by New Yorkers, people, Brooklynites, people who live here and understand the dynamics of the community. How can it be run from California? That's ridiculous. It has to serve New York, so it has to be run by us. This is a station for us, not for them. That's just... It's just completely like putting a round peg in a square hole. It's crazy, So I don't understand how they can try to pull this off. It's like, it's just pure greed. It has to be some kind of greedy motivation because it can't be anything else. This is ridiculous. And how can you take it back And, I mean, it has to be grassroots. That's what it is. I mean, you have these great new shows like Max and Murphy, and you have so many dynamic young people who are very articulate. I can't understand why they would object. They're saying it's not run well. It's just ridiculous. It's coming up. The station's coming up. I don't understand. It's just heartbreaking, you know?
Anyway, station and using the money to sure if they're
It's heartbreaking.
John Brinkley. To paraphrase Frederick Douglass, I appreciate this gathering because when all else fails, conditions will help to organize us. On a practical matter, I think Berthold is working on it, but we need to get our own 501c3 as quickly as possible because, and I know it can take as little as 2 days in order to get that because as people want to donate money, they want to be able to write it off, and we would like to have them write it off. So I think that is priority number one because obviously we need money. And then secondly, in terms of money for the ongoing, we probably need to go after some big bucks in order to deal with the $2.x billion that are owned in terms of the loan. So we need to get the 501c. We need to get our own 501c3. We need to do fundraising for paying the rent, but we also need to have a major campaign in order to allay that $2.x billion loan.
John, aren't you a candidate? Are you running?
Yes, I am.
Can you let people know right now?
I'm running.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
What's good, everybody? I'm Jack Devine. I'm also a candidate as part of the Red Wave Slate, which is a group of NYC DSA members. I'm running as part of the staff, but I just want to make everyone aware that our slate is putting together, I mean, we already put out a brief statement, but we're putting together a longer one, which we're condemning this action by this rogue faction at Pacifica National, and that we're also doing outreach to the New York City DSA Steering Committee, to State Senator Julia Salazar, as well as many of our coalition partners to condemn this action and support our statement. And I just want to thank everyone for being here and showing really strong unity. I think it's kind of a practice that we should try and build for the future, working together to fight against the forces that are trying to undermine community radio, trying to undermine working class institutions. What we really see this as is another attempt by sort of liberal nonprofit industrial complex to seize more power for themselves. And we want to fight to defend independent working class institutions that articulate a sort of politics that is desperately needed in this terrifying but also somewhat hopeful era if you are seeing some of the grassroots organizing that's going on. All right, thank you very much.
If there's no more public comment, we will continue that. Oh, yeah, questions and answer questions. Okay, come on out.
Gotta get on one. Get on the one. That's it. Ariel, they want to record it.
Okay, so a couple of things briefly. You can't hear me?
It's working. We can hear it.
Okay, great. I think it's important that the LSB actually pass a motion tonight and send a note to the National Election Supervisor that the election needs to be extended, at least in New York, where there have been no election announcements that I have heard when listening, and certainly on Monday, which was the last day people had to request paper ballots, which is important to a number of people. We obviously did not have carts playing on the air about that, so that's a problem, and that should be done tonight because the deadline for voting is next Tuesday, the 15th, and you will not be meeting again. In fact, they may have abolished you already. With regard to communicating with the public, there is a listserv that can be used for more than just announcing the monthly meetings. I will remind you of that. I will remind you also, Ms. Chair, that I wrote to you several months ago asking you to arrange for an email account where the public can easily write to the board. It's a Google group. You got techie people around here. If not, we've got the hackers. They can set it up like in a blink, and each member will get the email. There's no reason why we should only hear from you once a month to say come to a meeting, at which we generally do not have materials distributed in full to the audience, so we don't know what you guys are talking about. Motion should be prepared beforehand, should be emailed around. That really long email that everyone signed on to, it would be good if people had electronic copies. Not only are you killing trees, but if you're not home with your paper, you have no access to anything that that the board has done this year. Is that my time already?
Yeah.
No, you have 5 seconds left.
Oh. And I will say something. You know, I'm all for unity. We've got to fight this. It is very dirty work, but I will also point out that it's barely been a month since many of the people sitting in this room were engaging in dirty work themselves. So that when the illegal firing, well, I was interrupted. When the illegal firing was done in Los Angeles and a permanent GM was removed, some of our own folks were involved in that. When 2 people were fired without process from IGM positions in Houston, some of our people were backing those same dirty actions. Remember, what goes around comes around. That said, they can't have BAI.
She had a point there at the end. I just want to real quickly say two quick things. One is, let's stay away from assumptions, because I already have a list of conspiracy theories that are so long. I mean, it's funny, but I've heard from everybody, and they're all different and different versions of them and everything. So I really find when I see long lists of conspiracy theories, that the facts must be really what's happening. It's actually what you see of what's happening before us is what's really happening. Number one. Number two, forgive and forget and forgive. There's an old saying about that. This is neither forget nor forgive type of stuff. This is like divorce stuff. This is like finding your partner, significant other in bed with somebody else type of stuff. This is something where BAI, well, it's obvious what I'm saying, don't you think? It's time to split up. Divorce. D-I-V-O-R-S-C-E. You know what that word means? You never married, right? Divorce. Who here has been divorced? It's time for WBAI to talk about divorce. D-I-V-O-R-C-E from Pacifica. All right? And I'm going to allow you to discuss that at your own will, but this is neither forgive nor forget stuff.
No. This guy sounds like Paul DiRienzo.
Yeah, this guy's...
You his cousin?
They're brilliant.
Take it away, Mary. Okay, so I've attended for many years and was a member of the finance committee.
Take the mic, please.
Finance committee. I'm a member of the community advisory board, and I'm an attendee of the finance committee.
You're not on it.
Okay, so what I see here is that there's lots of culpability and blame and lots of inadequacies and lack of fiduciary duty by the members of the board for the last 10 or 15 years. It was one of the LSB meetings that Berthold announced that since he started in 2009 that there was over 2,000 premiums that were not delivered. Mitchell Cohen corrected that and said, it's more like 3,000. If you came to the finance committee meetings, I used to go on the report to the listeners. So, Pacifica is a business. So if these people here are going to take the roast beef off my table in LA and Berkeley, I'm not going to let them do that. If you're going to act like dummies and not run, so everybody rallies for a fight. But did you hear anybody here talk about how to run a radio station? How to increase listenership? It's all about go get a grant and let's get money to get the lawyers. Welfare, some sort of illegitimate food stamps.
Excuse me?
You want some government help, but then you don't want to go do anything. Something like that. Okay? So, you got to get listeners. It's okay. It's okay.
Your
Look,
comments about welfare are so reactionary.
Listen to Mario's.
look. I think you know what I meant.
Yeah, we do.
You want a handout, and you don't want to do the work.
Just a comment. All right, now your time is up. Thank you. Order.
Sorry I said something that I could have said something better. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
3,000 premiums not delivered.
Linda Perry.
And how do you get a radio show? I still don't know.
Okay, number one, I just want to say that this move, this illegal move was done on the last day of the first week of WBAI's fund drive. This was done at a time where our producers worked very hard to make programming which would engage our listeners. This was at a time where the 3 days before we made $11,000, and then 2 days later we made $13,000. So we were way above our goal, and they crippled us by doing this. Okay, they crippled us by seizing our ability to make funds. That's the first thing. Secondly, we were on a roll in terms of listenership. Our listenership was way up. It was not great, but it was way up from what it had been. In addition, our membership roll was way up from where it had been. So we were doing well, comparatively speaking. Online, right. Right, our online, people who would listen to us online was way up. As a matter of fact, Bertol and I looked, and our online stream was higher than any of the other stations. And they used a rubric which made it look like their online membership was the same, but it wasn't.
We were at 600, they were at 400.
Right.
So they stretched
They stretched the
graph
graph
to make it look
comparable, and it wasn't. So we were doing well, and they even said to me, your programming is improved. But then, when I was there that Monday, they said to me that they are going to remove WBAI from the space. And I'm sitting there with them that Monday morning because I called and I went right in. And they said to me they were dismantling the studio, the new studio. And that, that was going to be our heart and soul, So that's the setting for it, Mario, wherever you are. And we had been complying and trying to turn out the premiums as well. So this is the scene that I'm just trying to paint for you of what was going on. They copied our files in master control, and there were 3 terabytes worth of programming that they took of our programs.
We're out of time and out of the room.
Okay, so we're out of time. I'm sorry. I was just giving you the backdrop. I'm just saying, just to conclude, that we were doing well when they did this. And it was a move to make it so that we were totally crippled. Deliberate. Yes.
So up here are things that you are free to take with you, and among the things that you are free to come up and take is a letter, an email that I sent to John Vernile, which he never responded to, pointing out the increase in Nielsen ratings between Tuesday in January and a Tuesday in June. And some of the increases are dramatic. So Linda Perry is right, and this is the evidence. And I sent it to John Vernile, and he never responded to me. If you don't want to take the paper, you're free to take a photograph of any of these handouts. And there's also a statement here from a PNB board member saying, confirming that they were not made aware of this plan to dismantle WBAI. So, in conclusion, we do need, as a reminder, for all the board members to submit an affidavit to Arthur Schwartz by tomorrow morning, and I will send that out on the LSB group, his contact information. Number 2, tomorrow morning on the public Yahoo listserv, we will post at 9:15 a.m. Being at the Appellate Division at 27 Madison Avenue, 25th Street. So I will be at that tomorrow morning at 9:15.
Ralph here, would you care to send out a sample of how we're to get this to Mr. Schwartz?
Don't they have to be notarized? Doesn't it have to be
I want the roll call. How do you suggest we go? It's over?
No, the papers are done now. The idea that they're going to give it tomorrow morning and it will not be served under opposition, it doesn't work like that. So,
does it have to be
it's always a
notarized?
good thing to have for future documentation.
All right. Well, there is a notary public at 26 Court Street, and the guy is there very early in the morning. So if you want to get one notarized before you turn it in, go to 26 Court Street. I will be at the Commons or at the station on Friday at noon to coordinate with anybody who is working on this and working on fundraising. What am I? Also, I want to let you know that we will be having. There's a couple more announcements. Just hang in for just a second. We will be having another LSB.
Let's come to order. A couple of more announcements. Let's just get through this.
So they managed to do. They managed. Right. A couple more announcements. They managed to do this coup right after I had signed a contract and paid the cheaper rate to reserve this space for the next 3 LSB meetings. Wow. We will be having a meeting here on November 13th and another one on December 11th. After that, I don't know what will happen, but please come to those.
Please remember Tuesday night at the People's Forum.
Carolyn, November 13th, December 11th.
November 13th and December 11th.
All right, I want to announce the town hall meeting. That's what
All right, any more announcements?
Yeah. Order in the court here. There's one more announcement.
Two more.
All right. On Sunday at the Atrium, we're having a town hall meeting. All right? And the listservs should announce that. The town hall meeting was called by the town hall committee of the board. It'll be at 1 o'clock at the Atrium at 60 Wall Street. So the listserv should announce that. Thank you.
Sunday was today.
Sunday, this coming Sunday.
And what meeting of the town hall committee did
Also,
you...
I just wanted to announce a good tactic that people might want to do. Could I have the microphone, please?
Yeah.
Down. Pass that to Mitch. Here. Mitch.
So we have one person in the audience, Jennifer Jager, took it upon herself to call Tom Hartman's office and say, do you know that your shows are being used as a scab to scab on BAI? And they were really taken aback by it.
You did this, Mitchell?
No, Jennifer did. And that's something that we all could start doing, is calling the shows, whatever few are left on the air, to call them and complain about how they're being used, because they care about their reputations. So that's one thing we can do. Right, and there are phone calls to different shows.
Did you hear that?
Okay, the meeting is officially adjourned. We have about 5 minutes. Please help us stack the chairs. Thank you, everybody, for coming on this really difficult circumstances.